Hi, Peter Charles here of Hooked Fly Fishing. And in keeping with this idea of simple flies and simple technique for steelhead, we're going to look at tying a soft hackle wet fly specifically for steelhead. My first steelhead I ever hooked on the Credit River came on a Partridge Orange in about a size 12. It proves that they'll hit relatively small flies, and I've got a bunch of steelhead out in the Grand over the years on soft hackle flies, generally somewhere between a size 10 and a size 4. Most of my steelhead wets these days are going to be tied on a size 4 hook. Now, I've got a size 4 low water salmon hook here, put out by Camazan. You could use a standard wet fly hook as well. You don't have to use a salmon hook. I'm just using this because I like the hook. Now, the other thing that's going to be a little different, though, is I'm going to be using this bright neon orange. It's kind of a cord almost. It's put out by Uni. It's got neon. I don't even know if it's still sold, for that matter. I've had this stuff for years. It's very, very fluorescent. It's brilliantly bright. So I'm going to use that for dull days. If you wanted to use a more subdued orange for, nice, bright, shiny days, go for it. And the other thing I'm going to be using is this partridge skin. There's a lot of feathers on here that are too big for trout flies. And yes, I know I've showed you how to tie small flies with large feathers in a previous video. But we can make use of these feathers just the way they are. Now, the one thing I will mention is my local river is not fast flowing, so I will not do anything extra to this fly. It'll just be the body and the hackle. But if you are in a river with fast flows, very turbulent flows, I would suggest a dubbing ball right behind where the hackle goes. So the dubbing ball helps the hackle stand up so the hackle doesn't collapse. Because in fast flows, that soft hackle will collapse right down over the shank of the hook, which is not very useful. So let's get started, and we'll wind on here. Now, a couple of things to note. When you are intending to use a thread like this, and you're going to put it over a black hook, make sure you try and get close spacing of the wraps. Don't make wide spaces because the black will show through. It'll bleed through. This thread is pretty good for not bleeding through, but if you're sloppy with the wraps, it will. And one of the ways to do that, of course, is just hold the tag end up and just skid everything down. That's about all we need for a body. We don't need it to be long. Now, this thread will get a little darker when wet, since I put it over a black hook, but it will still retain its bright fluorescence. So it will just be a little darker orange, but very fluorescent in color. So that's great. Now, what I'm going to do with here, there are gray feathers on the skin and there's brown feathers. I'm going to be using a brown feather, which I take from near the top. And so it looks like this. And you can see it's roughly a little bit more than twice the gape of the hook, which is fine. So if I line it up like that, it's a little bit more than twice, which is good. I'm going to remove the fluffy stuff here, but normally I would strip both sides. I'm not going to do that this time. I'm going to leave both sides in place. And I'll just stroke that back. Tie in the tip. Now we're just going to fold these back. Oh, I pulled it out. Well, let's leave that mistake in there. One of the things we can do is when we are, because to avoid the risk of that, one of the things we can do is try to fold the barbs down as much as possible before we tie it in. And then when we got it, we're not trying to wrestle doing that while we're trying to avoid pulling it out. So I'll work my thread back. Let's see if we can prevent that from happening twice. It's going to be spinning on me, so this is okay. We can fix this. I've monkeyed around with this feather a bit too much now, so it's going to be a bit of a problem, I can see. One thing you can do is after you've got a couple of wraps on, you can try to fold it. Push that one back out of the way. There, you see that. Come on, pinch in there. Where you go? There we go. Normally soft hackles aren't this much bother, but I find that once you've messed around with the feather a bit too much, it can be a problem. So we'll just tie this off, keep it underneath. And we'll see if it'll break off. There we go. This is another case where a large head works. You want a nice bright large head. So we're just going to cover that stem there. And we whip finish. Okay, there we go. There's our soft hackle, steelhead size soft hackle, done with large feathers, that you normally would not use when tying soft hackles for trout. Do it with fluorescent thread if you want that nice bright appearance on dull days. This fly will just look orange on a sunny day. You won't get the fluorescent. And you notice it's got a lot of hackling. I've been generous with the hackling. I haven't been using the usual technique of stripping one side. I've used both sides. And as I say, this feather gave me a little bit of a problem, but most of the time soft hackles are easy to use. I figured I'd leave the awkward one in there to show you it happens, but most of the time I can wind these things on without any difficulty. Of course, when the camera's running, things are going to go wrong. But anyway, there we go. There's our soft hackle. As I say, I've designed this for slow flows in our local river. But if you have faster flows, just put a dubbing ball just right in there behind the hackle, and that helps the hackle to stand up, and it doesn't fold flat against the body, because it is a soft hackle and it will fold. But boy, in slower flows, that'll give beautiful movement just the way it is. I mean, you can imagine what steelhead will think when it sees that. It's like, yum. So give it a try, soft hackles for steelhead. They're a ton of fun, and I caught a load of fish on them. Cheers. Beautiful fish, beautiful.